Thank you for coming and welcome. I really appreciate you being here with me today. If your weather where you're at is anything like it is where I'm at, I really appreciate you being here. Our weather here is just so glorious that it's a shame that anyone has to be cooped up inside, even for a good cause like learning new things. We are going to do 4 case studies of people who have stomach markers in their eyes, and we're going to be really specific with this. Today we're only talking about stomach. We are not talking about any of the auxiliary digestive organs like the intestines or the liver or the pancreas. We're going to cover those in future sessions, so if you want to learn a little bit about those, just hang with me for the rest of the year and you will get through everything eventually. Regardless of whether your specialty is nutrition or herbology or some other holistic practice, I know you'll leave our session today with information you can use with your clients right away. One thing I've learned over my years as a wellness practitioner is that excellent healers keep learning. And so congratulations on being here to continue your learning and to augment what you can offer your clients. That is so important. I'd like to get to know you just a little bit. We've got a fairly small group tonight, or today rather, but I'm going to ask you if you would just type in the chat box what your specialty is or what your background is. Do you have nutrition, or are you a homeopath? Are you a naturopath? Are you a herbalist? Are you a body worker, an energy worker? If you would just go into the questions box and please type in what your background is, I would really appreciate that. That'll just help me to know a little bit about how deep I can go with things. Oh, nice, Michelle. Nice credentials. Well done. Anybody else? Martha, Heather? Any of you want to share? And Martha's a herbalist and iridologist. Excellent. Welcome. Welcome. Excellent. Okay. So like I said, we're a small group. There's only 3 of you online with me right now, which is great because it just means that we can take this where we need it to go a little bit for you. And Michelle's also a certified colon therapist. So we've got some good nutrition training here. And herbology and iridology. Excellent. I am really glad you are with me. 2 weeks ago, we covered 5 of the common digestive iris signs. We talked about stomach ring, we talked about gray border, comb teeth, contraction furrows, and radial furrows, and how they all relate to digestion. If you were not with me 2 weeks ago, please stay. Don't feel like if you missed it 2 weeks ago, we're going to be way over your head and oh, there's no sense in being with us. No, not true, not true. We are going to be doing practical applications, so you'll see what the indicators look like, and we'll talk about the case studies, and you will get something out of this. Again, today we're going to do the case studies, and we're going to see these markers in eyes. I'm going to give you some background on these people, and we're going to take it right through to what were the therapeutic recommendations I suggested for these people. We're going to start right off the top. Now, this is not the best photo in town. Best set of photos. It's my old camera, which I just retired about 6 months ago. And back when I bought this camera, dare I say 17 or 18 years ago, it was the cat's meow. It was an 8 megapixel digital camera. Oh, was I on top of the world. Things have come a long way. My cell phone has a better camera than that now. Yours probably does too. This is a young man, age 32. He came to me about 4 years ago. He had extreme heartburn with reflux. And the reason he came to me wasn't so much that he had reflux, it was that his doctor had told him just to use over-the-counter antacids and had given him a prescription for Pantaloc. He was not very pleased with that. He wanted a different answer, which was interesting because as you hear more about his story, you'll hear why I think that's interesting. He had had these symptoms of reflux and heartburn for a few years already. So this guy is only 32, and he's got a gut that's acting like it's 75, right? Not a good indication. And these symptoms that he had went on all day, every day. To complicate matters, he was a construction worker. So he was constantly bending and lifting and really taking that midsection of his body through a lot of movement. It's not like he was an office worker where he was pretty stationary and his stomach could settle. You know, if he had to bend over to pick up a piece, and if it was a heavy thing, he was a plumber specifically. So if he was lifting any heavy pipes or anything overhead, he was stretching. Just everything that he could do physically was happening that would aggravate this reflux. I actually knew his family, and he agreed with me, there was no family history of acid reflux problems, no family history of stomach issues. Now, as we look at these eyes, you'll notice there is no stomach ring. There are no real comb teeth. No, there's no comb teeth here to suggest any kind of a genetic predisposition to being over acid. So nothing here says this guy really was supposed to do this genetically. But he has an indicator that we haven't talked about before, and the indicator is a central heterochromia. Remember those words, they make for great dinner conversation. Heterochromia, big word. Hetero means different, chromia means color. So he's got different color. Central defines that it's in the middle of his eye, hugging his pupil. So right around here, we've got the central heterochromia. Now, the heterochromia means different things when it's in different places in the eye. When it's focused right around the pupil like it is in these eyes, it tells us that the impact of this heterochromia is going to be on the stomach. The color of this heterochromia tells us that his liver wants to run the show. And his liver wants to make things difficult for his stomach. Now, if you know anything about liver, we're not going to spend time on liver problems and liver markers per se in today's class. But if you know about liver, you know that it does over 500 different things in the body. And it can darn well make anything difficult that it wants to make difficult. So it can alter how your stomach behaves. Now, he didn't have any other symptoms. There was no other history at all that suggested he should be having these reflux issues. So I did what all good natural nutrition practitioners do. I asked him about his diet, right? And as we went through, the thing that really stood out for me was that he was drinking about 1 liter of cola beverages per day. He would start in the morning shortly after he got to work, and he would sip water, yes, but he would also sip cola all day. Now, here's where the complicating factor is. He wasn't really interested in overall health. He just wanted these symptoms to go away so he wouldn't have to take antacids. Now, does that sound like anybody that you know? Maybe someone you've worked with? Someone who just comes in and they don't really want to improve the quality of their health or the quality of their life for the long term. They just want to feel better right now, take the symptom away, give me the Band-Aid, and I'll get out of your hair. That's how this fellow was. So I suggested to him that he quit drinking cola beverages and all soda for a full week, which he did. Now, I just want to, side distraction here, I've got the window open, it's gorgeous here, but there's a dog barking. If you can hear the dog barking and if it's distracting, just raise your hand and I will close my window. It won't kill me to have the window closed for the next hour. And if it's not bothering you, great. Perfect. Maybe you can't even hear him. That would be even better. So I asked this fellow if he would quit drinking cola beverages for a week. He did. And his symptom disappeared like magic. He was really surprised. So I suggested after a week of him feeling so much better that he try drinking the soda again. I really like doing tests like this with my clients to prove my point. So he started drinking the soda again and the symptoms came back. So when I touched base with him just a few days later, he said, oh, I'm not drinking soda ever again. It is so not good for my gut. And as near as I know, his symptoms have not returned. Now, he's moved to New Zealand, so, you know, there we go. Now, why would soda do that? When we look at the stomach, right here there is, it's not so much an actual sphincter as just a band of muscle. So a sphincter suggests that it's really capable of tightly closing things, and this doesn't tightly close, it just reduces the diameter of the esophagus entering into the stomach. And when this, it is called a sphincter, it's called the esophageal sphincter. Say that fast 5 times. It is supposed to prevent reflux from happening. It's supposed to prevent the contents of the stomach from washing up into the esophagus. Now, his eyes, again, we're going to flip back here, don't show any indication towards being over acid. We don't have the stomach ring, which in my opinion isn't always about over acid. It can be about under acid, but he also does not have the comb teeth. So when we are looking at his eyes and we're going, well, what the heck is going on here? We have to then look at physical stress on tissues. And that would be a pressure buildup from carbonated beverages. So if you've got all that gas from carbonation sitting in the stomach and you're bending over and you're stretching, which of course really activates your core and squeezes in on the stomach, and you've got all of this pressure pushing on the gas that you have just put into your stomach, it can force its way up through that esophageal sphincter. So this is what was happening with him. And as long as he was putting in gassy stuff like the carbonation, it was, and then going through his normal day, he had a little 2-year-old toddler, and so picking up his child and playing with his child and doing all the things that a normal husband and father does and a construction worker does, he was just making that fizzy put pressure on the esophageal sphincter, and that's what was creating the heartburn. Now, as a side note, and you probably already know this, most heartburn and reflux is not from an over acid situation at all. The esophagus is alkaline. The stomach is acidic. And if you have an acid coming up, yes, it will burn. But if you have something that is more alkaline rather than the esophagus, so going to the other end of the pH scale, and it is backwashing up the esophagus, you are going to have a burn. Most people are actually not over acid. True over acidity is extremely rare. A lot of people who are taking Pantaloc and things like that don't actually need a proton pump inhibitor. They actually need to have their stomach pH properly regulated and their esophagus protected a little bit. They just need to keep the reflux from happening. Most of us will have less than 50% of our stomach acid production capabilities left when we reach 50 years of age. So if you're over 50, I hate to say it, but you are on that downward slope. You are on your way down. The dynamic iridology that we are looking at today and that we're using in this webinar will allow you, as you've seen, you saw how quick that was, right? Will allow you to do a better, faster intake interview. That's really important because some of you have intake forms that are scary. In creating the content for this webinar and for my iridology webinars, I interviewed a lot of holistic practitioners of all different kinds, and some of them have intake paperwork that is 20 pages long. So my question is, how much of that is truly relevant to your client? When you understand dynamic iridology, you will be able to discern your starting point way faster than by going through 20 pages of irrelevant questions. You'll also be able to create your therapeutic sequence right in your client session. So that is really important for a reason I'm going to share with you, and well, I'll share part of it right now. And that is, if you've been in the habit of, you see your client, spend the hour with them, gather their information, you charge them for that hour, then you go off and you spend 2 or 3 or 4 hours writing a beautiful report, really pretty, printed up on letterhead, blah, blah, blah. And then you meet with them again for the second session and they pay you for that hour. You've spent 2 to 3 hours that you probably didn't get paid for. Because you're probably actually only charging an hourly rate that is adequate for your training for the time you're with them. Right? So if you normally charge, say, $150 an hour, and you've just spent 2 to 3 hours doing work on your own, say 3 hours for easy figuring, you've just reduced your hourly rate to $40, $45 an hour. That hits. That really hits hard. So if you can create your therapeutic sequence right in your client session and save yourself 2 or 3 hours of homework, that's a good thing. With dynamic iridology, you can prioritize what you teach your clients to avoid snowballing them. If you have a 20-page intake, or if you spend 2 to 3 hours writing up a fancy schmancy report, you are giving your client way too much information in their next session. And they are leaving thinking, I could never do this. And I know this is true because I have had the experience of reconnecting with clients that I haven't seen in a long time. Now, I used to do the separate report thing, spend 2 to 3 hours, thought I was great, giving great value. They'd come in, I'd snowball them with 2 hours of information, but only charge them for 1. Do you see a problem here? And then when I reconnected with them 4 or 5 years later, it was like, oh yeah, you know why I didn't come back? It was because I could never do everything you told me to do. So they hadn't done any of it. Where's the benefit in that? So if you can prioritize it and choose 1 or 2 things to really have them focus on, things that they can do and get some rewards and some success, that's where you want to be. You can keep giving them 1 or 2 pieces of homework every time you see them, right? They're successful, they want to come back, they're getting results, they want to come back. It works like a charm. Dynamic iridology allows you to spend time with your family or your friends or whatever you want to do outside of your clinical time because you're not creating client protocols outside of your paid client time. That is so important. You need a life, right? You need a life, and you need a life outside of what you do in your clinic. So who am I and what qualifies me to share what I'm sharing with you now? We've got 3 more case studies to do here. This is me, Judith Cobb. I've been a holistic health coach since '81, a master herbalist since '83, a nutritional consulting practitioner since '94, natural nutrition clinical practitioner since 2016. I'm a certified iridologist, and I've been an iridology instructor certified through IPAS since 2016, but I started teaching way before then. Teacher of wellness professionals like you since 1985, and I am the wife of 1, the mom of 7, and the grandma of 7. Now, I tell you, I've made every mistake you can make in a holistic wellness practice, and I've done it while having and raising those 7 children. And I've invested a lot of time and a lot of money in making a lot of mistakes, and in those mistakes I learned how not to build a business, right? Which means it wasn't really a mistake, it was just an expensive lesson. And I'll spend a lot less money learning how to actually build a business well and choosing mentors who could lead me through the landmines of building that holistic wellness business. And so that's what I'm offering you today, is some of what I've learned to help you build a holistic wellness business successfully. Well, that's enough about me. Let's get on to what we want to talk about, some more of it. Dynamic iridology stresses that the irides, and that's I-R-I-D-E-S, which is the correct plural for iris when we're talking about the eyes, are a genetic blueprint of the body. A construction blueprint shows you where all the walls and the pipes will be, but it doesn't tell you specifically the interior decorating or even what most of the rooms will be used for. So just because the blueprint says this is a bedroom doesn't mean it has to be a bedroom. It could be an office, it could be a storage room, it could be decorated in pink Victorian print, it could be decorated in something very modern and something very stark. And so iridology is like that. When we are looking at the iris, it shows us where the potential strengths and weaknesses are. But it doesn't tell us absolutely everything. When we see weaknesses that are showing up, potential weaknesses that show up in an iris, if that person treats their body really well, they may not have any problems, or they may stall those problems off for a very long time. If, on the other hand, they treat their body very poorly, those problems will likely crop up very quickly. On the other hand, maybe we're looking at an eye that has, wow, so much genetic resilience, so much strength. These parents gave this person just all the best stuff. That person can take that beautiful constitution, I would compare that to a Rolls Royce, and they can drive it into the ground. If they do not take good care, if they don't do their lube jobs, they don't do their oil changes, they don't, put some good turtle wax on the outside, things like that periodically, they can wear that body out. They, just like they can seize that Rolls Royce engine, they can really do damage in their body, and it can be harder to repair. And so we need to remember that when we look at eyes, we are looking at potential. Now, when we look at the whites of the eyes, that's a little bit different, because the whites of the eyes are very dynamic. They show us what's going on in the body right now, and they show us progression, and they show us healing. They show us that current state of the body. Now, we're not going to delve into sclerology in this session, because that is an entirely adjunct study that we would need to do separately. Here's our next case. This is a female, age about 34, 35, 34, there we go. She has no stomach complaints. But think back 2 weeks ago, we have a very clear case of comb teeth, right? That's that rough edge coming around here. We've got a very clear stomach ring, and we can see the edge of the stomach ring right here, so we know we've got a stomach ring. We even, depending on your computer resolution, can probably see a bit of a gray border in here. And so we've got minor radial furrows that we talked about, because that's what makes our comb teeth. And we've got contraction furrows. She's got pretty much, well, she got all the 5 basic markers we learned 2 weeks ago, but she has no complaints. What gives? What gives? Why is that? Now let's just go back through those markers, and then we'll talk about why she has no problems. That gray border again would suggest a reduced ability to assimilate. She's got the comb teeth, which suggests that she has a reduced ability to secrete hydrochloric acid. We've got the stomach ring, which again suggests a reduced ability to secrete hydrochloric acid. So we've got both indicators for low hydrochloric acid secretion. We've got minor radial furrows, which suggests an enervated stomach, so not enough nerve feed going to the stomach. And we've got contraction furrows, which suggests she's sympathetic dominant. Now, what do you know? And I need to see some lightning fingers here again for a little interaction. What do you know about the sympathetic nervous system response and how it affects digestion? Now, this might take you just a moment to type in, and I'm a patient person. What do you know about the sympathetic nervous system and how it impacts digestion? Ah, Martha, good work. Boy, you were fast. It inhibits digestion. Absolutely it does. It shuts things off because the sympathetic kicks in when you're under stress. And when you're under stress, you're running from the bear, or you've just maybe tragically been involved in a significant car accident. It's really not important what happens in your stomach. It's important that you've got the activation for the fight or flight to be able to cope with whatever the stress is. So she has got all of these markers in her eyes, and yet she has no symptoms. However, there is a significant family history of stomach issues. She talks about her dad especially, and the kinds of stuff that he has suffered with as far as his stomach goes since she can remember. So in her case, even though she's got these weak links, she has done some very, very good things. Okay, she eats an almost completely organic diet. And she's got a few other things that I'll tell you about in just a minute. But what could she be facing in the future? Remember, this is genetic potential. This is looking at her blueprint. And just because a room is being used as a storage room right now doesn't mean it's not going to be used as an office 3 months from now. right? So she can change what her body is doing by how she treats it. Right now, things are functioning well. If she decided to treat her body poorly, or if there were other things that were compromising her health, she might find that with the poor protein digestion that she would have really, really bad gas, or poor wound healing because she's not breaking down her proteins well enough to give her the individual amino acids to repair tissue. She might develop anemia, again, because she's not doing the proteins well enough to build her heme structure for her red blood cells. She might find that food just sits heavily in her stomach. She eats a meal that used to be really a pleasant thing that made her feel really good, and now it feels like it's a brick sitting in her stomach. She might find that she doesn't assimilate nutrients well. Now, how in heaven's name does anyone know whether they're assimilating well or not? Well, again, it would be symptoms like maybe developing anemia. She's not able to assimilate the iron, for instance. It might be that she's got other vitamin deficiencies or mineral deficiencies showing up. Again, it could even be poor wound healing. She might develop a nervous stomach, where any kind of stress or anxiety goes straight to her stomach, not necessarily her whole gut, but her stomach, and makes her feel nauseous or just kills her appetite completely. So what did I teach her now that was really important for helping her to maintain this gut that is functioning all right in spite of what her eyes say it's supposed to be doing? Well, the first thing I did was I just reinforced things she was already doing, and they were really things like good eating hygiene, that she should eat only when she's relaxed. We want her to be accessing the parasympathetic mode because that is the rest and digest. That helps her gut to work better. Reminded her that she should be restricting the amount of fluids she has with her meal and encouraging her to drink the bulk of her fluids in between her meals. I reminded her that chewing her food really well is very, very important because if it's not properly prepared in the mouth, nothing else is going to work well below that. And we talked a bit about food sequencing, that if she ever started to have problems, she could experiment with food sequencing, which is where she would start her meal with her carbohydrate, and then she would move on to her leafy salad, and her low carb vegetables, and then she would move on to her proteins. And that it's almost as good as food combining, but it's a little less daunting than food combining. People can do food sequencing more easily. So you might be looking at pictures like this, and these are really lovely pictures, really nice pictures, great images, especially when you compare them to the first ones we looked at today. And you might be wondering if you actually need to mortgage your home or sell a kidney on eBay to buy the right kind of equipment to do these kinds of pictures. The answer is yes, but that's not where you start. When you are just starting out in iridology, don't spend $3,000 or $4,000 on equipment. Spend $40 or $50 on equipment. On Amazon and places like that, you can buy really decent lighted magnifying glasses. This is the first equipment I ever owned. I still have it. I still use it occasionally when I want to get nostalgic. So it's a good 5x or 10x magnifier, and I suggest actually having one of each, and a pen light that gives really, really white light. You can buy these on eBay or Amazon for dirt cheap. A lighted magnifying glass like what a stamp collector would use, another great option, and this is another one that I bought specifically for iridology. It's not my favorite. It's a little harder to use. On Amazon, you can buy a lighted magnifier that has 3 interchangeable lenses. I think it's a 3x, a 5x, and a 10x for like $25. What a steal. I really like my students to have a lighted magnifier and a separate magnifying glass and pen light because it allows them to play with the light and cast shadows in different ways. So I just encourage you, if you're interested in playing with iridology, start with basic equipment. And when you're ready to actually get moving and you've decided, oh, I love this, this just is what I want to be doing in my practice, let me know, because I can connect you with a couple of suppliers for really, really top-notch equipment, right? And you want to get the best. When you understand the iris and the sclera, you can integrate your nutrition knowledge. We've got some well-trained nutritionists with us today. We've got people who have amassed their training from years of practice. And you want to be able to integrate that. You need to know what to share with your client because you don't want to give them everything in one sitting. It's too much information. Integrate your herbal knowledge. So if you've got that herbal training like I know Martha does, you can integrate that as well. So if you've got nutrition and herbs, you can dabble a bit in both. Integrate your lifestyle knowledge. If you've been around for a few years, you know a few things. And sometimes you know some really practical ways of addressing things, some practical everyday suggestions that could be of huge benefit to your clients. Access those as well. You can eliminate lengthy intake forms. My intake form formally is 1 page. Name, address, phone number, you know I'm not a doctor, and I'm only going to give you nutrition types of information. Seek medical attention if you need it. Permission to use your iris photos in teaching. End of discussion. I've got 3 more pages of questions, and most of the time they don't get filled out because I fill those out as I'm talking with my client. And because I'm letting iridology guide the questions I'm asking, some of those questions on my 3 pages are irrelevant. And so you get rid of the lengthy intake forms and you turn the intake into a dialogue, which really is great for your clients because they feel like the rapport develops. They feel like they're being heard. We all know the studies that have been done with medical doctors, right? The ones that say that the doctor has decided within 17 seconds of stepping into the exam room what he is going to suggest for you. Does that strike you as a bit bizarre? It does me. How do you know anything about anyone in 17 seconds? Makes no sense. When you know the iris and the sclera, you can prioritize the pieces of education and homework to share with your clients today, in the next session, and in the session after that as you help your client craft their health. Right? This is really a powerful way to continue to build your business, but also to build success for your clients. If you give them 1 or 2 pieces of homework and they're successful, they will keep coming back. It helps you to easily create those bite-sized, pun intended, doable pieces of homework for your clients in your client sessions. No more overwhelmed clients in your practice. It's so important. You can stop spending hours of your own time, unpaid, putting reports together for your clients. Yeah. Get paid for what you do. You are worth it. And look incredibly smart even if you feel insecure as you ask client-specific questions and create programs right in your sessions. Just want to pop that to point number 7 here for just a second. And I want to do this because most of us in the helping fields that are holistic practitioners want to help people. Most of us are guilty at some point in time of saying, I just want to help people. It doesn't matter if I make money or not. Sad truth is the bank needs you to make money. You need to pay your bills. If you've got a mortgage, you've got to pay that. If you've got kids, you've got to do what's right for them. So you have to make some money. In my experience, if you are not charging enough for what you are doing, people will not value what you do. They will often not do the homework. Now, that doesn't mean you want to charge through the nose. And it doesn't mean you can't barter. If you've got someone coming in who is really destitute, but they have a skill you can use, you can barter. There's nothing wrong with that. You get value, they get value, it's all good. But charge what you are worth. So the next round of Confident Nutritionist Dynamic Iridology is starting on October 5th, and it's an online course. It ends mid-March. That gives you an idea of how long it is. Registration is going to open in my next webinar, which I believe is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's September 6th. Sorry, the date didn't sound right in my head. September 6th. And in that webinar, we are going to be talking about hepatic markers. Hepatic markers. So markers that have to do with the liver. Important organ. Remember, it does over 500 jobs. You got to know these. And so if you're not already getting my emails, you want to go to iridology.education And on the right-hand side of the page, there's a green box that you can go to sign up to be on my email list to know about these webinars when they're happening. When we teach this class, there will be 2 sections. So if you're in a time zone where one time doesn't work, the other one probably will. We're going to do a 10 a.m. Mountain Time class, which is the time that we started today. We are also doing a 6 p.m. Mountain Time class. So if 6 p.m. works better for you, great. If your 10 a.m. works better for you, great. If you are located overseas, say in England, you will probably want the 10 a.m. Mountain Time because that puts us to about 5 or 6 p.m. your time. So choose your time when you register. And again, registration will be opening 2 weeks from today, and I will have that link in our next webinar. What will you learn in the class? You'll get 20 2-hour live webinar classes. Each class is recorded for playback on demand. So you can go back and listen to these to clarify, to fine-tune, to go, what did she say there? Right? Although we have a lot of time for discussion in the classes, I make sure that we leave time for discussion. I want you to be clear in class. And if you need to go back and listen again, that's fine. We include iridology and sclerology, the International Iridology Practitioner Association curriculum. You will have access to your student website with all of the course content. The textbook that I have written is digital, so it will be downloaded. You'll have access to the downloads every week to download that chapter. I do that on purpose because some of you will be keeners and you're going to want to go ahead rather than spending adequate time on today's lesson and doing it well and making sure it's under your belt and wow, you're solid, you're going to zip ahead, and that's going to reduce how well you learn today's information. And so I'm really strict about not releasing content more than a day or 2 before class. And I do try to release it a day or 2 before class so you can go over it before class. Then as I teach it, it makes more sense and you know what questions you want to ask. We have a once-a-month Q&A tutorial session that is recorded for playback on demand where students and alumni, this is open to students and alumni, submit cases they're working on or questions they have, and we discuss those in a real open dialogue roundtable kind of situation. And we have a Facebook page for the students and alumni for support between classes and after your course completion and even after you've got your certification. It's there for ongoing support. It's the community page, if you will, but it is only open to my students and my alumni. Another case study, yay! Female, age 35. Notice these eyes are very dark brown. We call these hematogenic eyes. That gives you a little clue as to where some things might be going on, but we're not going to delve into that. Her main complaint is she feels full quickly and she never feels hungry. So she's got a really, what I would consider, deficient appetite. So when someone says, I never feel hungry, my first question is, why isn't the stomach emptying properly? Why is food sitting in there? And of course, the longer it sits, the more it ferments, and that's yucky. So that's the first question that pops in my head. My observations here, and I know you're already jumping to that because you're just that smart. Contraction furrows. Which, as Martha said earlier, inhibits digestion. Because contraction furrows say she is sympathetic dominant. When she's in that sympathetic mode, her digestion is going to be stopped, and because she has so many contraction furrows, she likely spends a lot of her day in the sympathetic mode without even realizing it. It is her normal, so she doesn't realize she is just in that edge of that fight or flight. Always a little on edge, always just ready to run, ready to punch, ready to go. Now, she's a lovely person. She's not aggressive, so I don't want to imply that she has a really aggressive personality. But that subconscious layer is always that she's ready to roll, ready to go with whatever's going to happen. And so because we know that the sympathetic puts us into fight or flight and it shuts down digestion, where we needed to go here, again, wasn't so much a food change as it is some lifestyle work. Okay, so do you see how quick that is? She comes in and she says, I have no appetite, I'm never hungry. You look at her eyes, you see these contraction furrows, and you go, well, and you're not going to say this because you can't diagnose or prescribe, you're going to think in your head, her stomach probably doesn't empty because she's probably always in the sympathetic mode. What can I teach her to help her digest better? So I suggested that she should eat small amounts, small meals, and that she should eat only when relaxed and when she's not distracted. So really encouraging her to sit, to maybe turn on some music, not to read a book, not to do anything like that, because those are distractions that keep you from chewing well, but to just get her to maybe look out the window or something like that. Just be very gentle with herself for 15 minutes or so while she eats, so she can focus on tasting her food. That's critical for digestion. So she can focus on chewing her food. That's critical for digestion. I also suggested that she might want to consider chewing her food more thoroughly. We talked about what I call the 2 chomps and a swallow method that most people use, where literally they put the food in their mouth, they chomp on it twice, and then they swallow it. The food has not been chewed, it's been cut into pieces, but it hasn't been chewed. So we talk about, what does chewing well mean? Well, chewing well means it needs to be the consistency of cake batter in her mouth. Oh, cake batter. Well, that's pretty fine. It is. That really aids digestion. The better prepared the food is for going from the mouth into the stomach, the better the stomach and the intestines will work, right? We talked with her about limiting her fluid with her meals. Okay, primarily drinking more between her meals, not using water or beverage to wash her food down. And this is all making sense to you, right? If this is all stuff that you would tell a client, would you raise your hand? These are all the kinds of things that you would normally tell your clients? Yeah, Michelle. Yeah, it is, right? What about the rest of you? Are these the kinds of things that you would tell someone? Yeah? Chew your food better. Don't drink fluids with your. Yeah, good job. Good. You're all totally on the ball. I just needed to make sure you were still awake, actually. Now, I also suggested that in her meal preparation, she could add more savory herbs. The more flavor we have in our food, the more our meal is, our digestion is stimulated, right? So get her using dill and sage and rosemary and basil. Fresh basil is so, and cilantro, all that kind of stuff, because those tastes and those aromas they just stimulate the brain and they get the juices flowing, and that helps with digestion. Because she spends so much time in that sympathetic mode, we may need to use eventually some nervine herbs. So maybe some hops or some skullcap, for instance, or some adaptogenic herbs, because if she is spending time in the sympathetic mode, it is stressing her adrenals. It's like revving her engine just a little bit 24/7. So we may need to go to some astragalus or some rhodiola or something like that to support those adrenal glands. I always like to start with the practical application things first, the chewing, the fluid, the adding the savory herbs, things that are really easy to do. Give that a month or two and then have them come back in and assess, how are things going? Do we need some herbs? Do I need some digestive support of some description here? And then we can build the program from there. So the Confident Nutritionist class, I've got a couple of testimonials for you, because it's always good, when you're taking a class, you want to know, what do people think of this class? Do you do the check for the Google reviews on things? I do. And if something's got 2 stars out of 5, no thanks. Actually, I'll read the comments to see what they were, to see if I agree that those would be game changers for me. But if something is routinely getting 4 or 5 stars out of 5, I'm really going to also read those reviews, make sure there's more than 2 or 3 submitted by the person's mother, right? You want to make sure they're legit. So here's a couple of reviews for you. This is Allison Taylor. She did the class, started last September, and completed her coursework in March. She is now working on towards her IPA certification, which is a separate step. 7 weeks in, remember it's 20 weeks long, and this is what she said after 7 weeks. 7 weeks in, she can officially call herself an iridologist in training. The amount of learning is enormous, and there's a lot of depth to this course. Judith's teaching is professional and easy to learn as she stops for questions. Her students are her priority, and their understanding of the information is imperative to her. Really is. It really is. I will go over things as many times as it takes, from as many different angles as I need to. I will find more samples of pictures. I will do anything I can to help every student grasp every concept 100%. Because my goal in this class is not just to turn out great iridologists. That is one of my main goals. But it's also, if they choose to do IPA certification, I want them to pass with grades high enough that if they want to certify as an iridology teacher and instructor, they can. And if they don't want to certify as an instructor, that's fine. We just know their grades were all over 90%. And that's my goal, is to prime every student to be over 90. I would definitely recommend Allison continues this course to anyone who's even thinking of taking an iridology course. Judith is a wealth of knowledge and a fantastic mentor. I love this course, and I know you will too. Allison had to take this course for another certification she was working on. Some of her co-students in the other program opted to do iridology completely by correspondence. And Allison keeps telling me they struggled. They struggled. They did not get support. They were doing it on their own, and they were pretty jealous that Allison had a teacher she could go to. She had all these online resources she could go to, but she had so much support. Here's another one, Karen Choate. She just finished her coursework in April, May, just recently, and might have been later than that, but she said, and she's got lots of credentials under her belt already. Having recently completed the Confident Nutritionist program with Judith Cobb, I can honestly say this is one of the most rewarding, informational, and fun classes I have ever had. Judith is a born teacher. Thank you, Karen, you're so sweet. She's extremely patient and kind. She keeps things light with a bit of humor, but above all, she's a master at her craft and generously shares her knowledge. The course is really only supposed to be iridology, but just like these little snippets that I'm sharing with you, I throw in anything that I think will be helpful to the point we're discussing. Judith is committed to the success of her students. I feel very blessed and fortunate to have had such an amazing teacher and to have been a part of her class. I've already implemented several techniques and applied extremely crucial and beneficial knowledge and skills that I learned in this class to my own practice with great success. Thanks to Judith, I am definitely a much more confident nutritionist. And I would add, she's an amazing iridologist. So again, I want you to get on the list. If you're not already on the list for my newsletters, go there and get on the list, because you want to know, right? You want to know. Case study number, oh, is this number 4 already? Oh my goodness, how time flies when we're having fun. This is amazing. Okay, female, 20 years old, sensitive to wheat and gluten. She thought she could have a little bit, but what I'm going to tell you is that in a session we just did this week, she has now found that any wheat or gluten is causing problems. Interesting, because that means it always has created problems. She's just now inflamed to the point where any amount will cause problems. She also finds that fatty foods lead to gut pain and rapid reaction diarrhea. So she has too much fat, which is not very much. She's in the bathroom right now. It just goes straight through her. She has texture sensitivities to foods, so she won't eat most foods, especially vegetables, because she doesn't like their textures. She limits her choices of vegetables, and she prefers cooked vegetables. She will do some smoothies, but she's kind of picky about what goes into them. So this set of eyes is a little different from any that we've seen before. Let's just flip back and have a look. So notice how this one has just everything is radiating outwards. Notice how, okay, that was slow. This one also, everything is radiating outwards. And even going back one, did I miss one in here? Maybe I did. This one, however, has all of these loop-de-loops in it. All of these loop-de-loops. Now that's going to be really important for us here. When we are starting with our analysis here, And she's already told us gut pain, rapid reaction diarrhea, doesn't like most foods. She knows that gluten is an issue. We start with looking at the very center, and we see we have that gray border. Right, so the gray border again means she's got the potential for reduced assimilation of nutrients. And then we look and we see, yep, she's also got a stomach ring. So we know she likely may not be producing hydrochloric acid. She certainly is predisposed to not produce adequate hydrochloric acid, and that is going to lead to poor protein digestion. So when we have the poor protein digestion and we stack that up with that gray border, which is poor assimilation, not only is she not breaking her protein down, but she can't assimilate the amino acids very well. Okay, do you see how this builds? And then we add on all of these loop-de-loops that are in here. These loop-de-loops tell us that she is prone to adrenal stress. Genetically, she's programmed to adrenal stress, and she is what I would describe as a fragile person. She's very petite, very fine-boned. She fatigues very easily. She gets overwhelmed very easily. And so right now she's in school. Well, she is in school as in university during the school year. When she's not in university, she works part-time for her father's business, but it's very part-time because her father has a business. He's a contractor, so she can do her work at home, and she'll work for an hour or two, and then she'll go lay down because she's overwhelmed. And it all makes sense. If she's not digesting and if she's not assimilating, she's not getting the nutrient through to where it needs to be, but her adrenal glands need nutrient and they're not getting it. So she's got very low resilience, very low ability to handle much of anything. And so with all of this, the placement of these loop-de-loops as well also suggests that she may be prone to blood sugar imbalances. So what we suggested for her was very, very simple. She's got some proteins that she can eat and enjoys. So we suggested that she should be doing 5 to 6 small servings of protein per day, that she does need to relax when she's eating. And it's ideal if she can eat these proteins without any other food. So eat the proteins almost as snacks and then eat the rest of her veggies and whatever on their own as well. Also suggested reducing carbohydrates because she's really into anything high carb. Of course she would be because she's looking for energy. So especially vegetables, especially potatoes, really into potatoes. Suggested that she may need to go to a more complex carbohydrate. So if she could tolerate brown rice or quinoa or an ancient grain of some sort steamed up, that would be a better choice for her carbs. And also suggested, since she prefers cooked vegetables, that she might benefit better if she could cook them a little less, because she was cooking them to what I call gray mush stage. You know what stage that is, right? Where you look at it and it falls apart. I wanted her to have a little more resistance rather in the vegetables, right? So that she'd have to chew them a little bit. The problem with going with vegetables that are cooked to the gray mush stage is you can swallow them whole. If they're soft, they go down too easy. And so I wanted her veggies to be a little more firm so that she'd have to chew them, and asked her to take her time chewing them so that she could get all the right enzymes onto those vegetables so that they would digest and assimilate better. I also suggested adding a protein digestive aid, so betaine hydrochloric acid, for each time she eats protein. And then the last suggestion was that since she does smoothies, she could put some of her vegetables in the smoothies. A couple of leaves of kale hides really well. A couple of handfuls of spinach hides really well if you've got the right kinds of things in that smoothie. So just encouraged her, throw in a raw carrot. Now, I've got to tell you, I'm not a huge fan of smoothies as a general rule. I know I'm way out there in left field on this, but I'm pretty sure that in another 10 years they're going to find out that I was dead center. And that wasn't meant to sound arrogant. It's just that that's how things go when you've been in the industry, you know your stuff, right? Here's the problem with a smoothie. We throw all of these really high antioxidant foods into a high-powered blender, and we whip them around. We whip them and we whip them and we whip them till everything is that cake batter consistency. But in the whipping, we have incorporated so much oxygen into the stuff in the blender. And oxygen is exactly what all of the antioxidants in those vegetables are supposed to be acting on. Remember, oxygen in and of itself is a free radical, right? And if we need oxygen to breathe, but when we've got too much oxygen in our system that isn't being properly used and it's just floating around, it does damage. So these antioxidants, their purpose is to find those free radical oxygen molecules and neutralize them to prevent damage. When you put all of your veggies and all of your fruits and all of your super good high antioxidant, probably organic stuff into a blender, and you whiz it till it's smooth at a super, super high speed, you've incorporated so much oxygen that you have spent your antioxidants right there in the blender. When you've done that, you may be getting a few minerals. You might be getting some fiber, but you've destroyed most of your vitamins and all of your antioxidants. So it's really, really important that we not go recommending that everybody should do a smoothie every day. Right? Because people have that false sense of security that if I have this big smoothie and I've put in my 5 or 6 ounces of vegetables into that of my leafy greens, and I've whizzed that up and I added some ginger and some apple, some things so that it tastes really yummy. There, I've done it. No, you haven't. No, you haven't. The benefit of chewing them instead is multiple. Number one, another pitfall with smoothies is people don't sip them, they gulp them. They don't take the smoothie in, swish it around in their mouth, coat it with lots of enzymes, and then swallow it. They gulp it. They grab the smoothie and they drink it on their way to the bus stop, right? They drink it fast usually. Get it done, get it over with, good. There, it's done for the day. When we have to chew our vegetables, like I recommend to all of my clients, we cannot chew nearly as well, nearly as fast. We don't incorporate nearly as much oxygen into that stuff in our mouth as it would have if it was in a blender. So we chew it well so that it's cake batter consistency. That's how well our body needs us to chew it to actually work with it beyond there. But when you consider the RPMs of these high-speed blenders versus the amount of effort that goes into chewing, there's a lot less effort actually goes into chewing, a lot less abuse and insult on the food, if you will. So more of the nutrients are protected. I only recommend smoothies if I absolutely have to. And in this person's case, she wasn't willing to add more vegetables that she could recognize to her diet. Simply not willing to. Flat out refuse. It's like, fix me, but do it without me doing anything. Okay, the magic wand is in the repair shop and they aren't getting parts for it. That's been discontinued. Can't help you with the magic wand anymore. So I had to go to the smoothies aspect. It's the only way we can get it into her for now. I don't know if she will ever change. She will get a minimal amount of good, but a minimal is better than a no amount of good, right? So that's where we ended up with her. Awesome. And so as we close out, again, join me on September 6th for the next live webinar, the Hepatic Indicators webinar, where we are going to be studying all kinds of stuff. Oh, Martha, you are so sweet. Okay, so Martha has sent in a comment. All training I've had with Judith has been so useful and well worth it. Thank you, Martha. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. And so I encourage you to join me again on September 6th. That is when registration will be opening for the course that starts on October 5th. And September 6th will be the only day that there will be early bird registration. which means there will be maybe some perks that might make it worth signing up quickly on that day. So we'll talk about the pricing that day, we'll talk about payment plans, we'll talk about all kinds of stuff, any little bonuses, and special perks will only be offered in that session, and they will be very time limited. So if you're interested in learning full-blown iridology, not just bits and pieces like you're learning with me in these webinars, you'll want to join me on September 6th to learn more about the program. Excellent. Any other questions or comments that you would like to share with me? It's been great having you with me today. If you're typing anything in, raise your hand so I know to wait for you. And if you're, oh, Martha's typing something else, and we'll let her do her lightning fingers. Martha has actually done several courses with me. She is a very regular student with me. And she is still typing, so if any of the rest of you want to sneak a comment or a question in as well, you've got a moment to do that. Martha said this one particularly helps her efforts. She's specializing in gut health and solving gut problems, so today's workshop really helped with that. Well, I'm glad it did, Martha. Excellent. Excellent. And of course, in the scope of the course, we do a whole lot more with that. So wonderful. Thank you so much. I appreciate you being with me today. And if you loved this, it's being offered again at 6 o'clock tonight. And if you know people who you think, wow, they should hear this, again, tell them to just go and sign up for it on my website. How will I get the link to them that quickly? Actually, there are places on the website where they can just sign up for it. So have them go to iridology.education and sign up and join us tonight. And we'll see you in 2 weeks. Take good care. Bye-bye.